All right. Hello again. So now we're going to talk about acknowledging sources and avoiding plagiarism. This is very important as we're moving towards a research paper. Our first report that's going to be research paper and research based. And so let's talk about this. If you want any more information on any of this, just see pages 539 to 543 in our textbook, and you'll be able to find it there. Okay. So acknowledging sources. Readers need to know where your information came from. So why? Why do they need to know where I got that information from? One, they need to know, did you get that from a reliable source? Should they believe you? You can't take everything that you see in print just as truth. And so that's one of the reasons they need to know, where you got the information from, especially. When you are acknowledging a source, one of the things you can do is introduce the source by naming the author with a signal phrase. So there are signal phrases, and I know there are in the textbook, and we can find more signal phrases. Things such as when Jane Austen introduced Elizabeth Bennet, she writes, and then I would put my quote. So I'm naming the author with a signal phrase and introducing it. Whether you're putting in if like especially when you're putting in a direct quote, it should not just be plopped in there, here it is, nor should your paper look like just a series of quotes, whether direct or paraphrase. You do have to put your own input in there, but also you want to kind of introduce it. And so there's several ways to introduce this. Um, Provide brief documentation. So that's our parenthetical citation or in-text citation. It's called both. I've seen it both ways. Just know that, parenthetical refers to, okay, it's in parentheses. In-text citation means it's inside the text, it's inside your paper. They're the same thing, it's just they're interchangeable. They're called the same thing. But you do need to give that documentation too. So for example, my same example, when I'm using my primary source, Pride and Prejudice, um, in the parentheses afterwards in my in-text citation, since I've already said Jane Austen wrote, I won't put Austen necessarily, but I will have to put the page numbers in the parentheses afterwards, so I can give credit and where that information came from. And so, and when someone goes to my works cited page, you'll see which um, version of the book that I'm using, so that they can go to that exact same page in that same book if they can find the edition. Okay. Citations are basically kind of like I said, they refer to your works cited, so your in-text slash parenthetical citation. So what happens is in my essay, I have my citation, right? My in-text citation or my parenthetical citation that'll have the author's last name, and or it basically is going to refer to, if someone goes to your works cited page in MLA format or reference page in APA format, they're same thing, just different names for different formats. Um, that'll be the very first thing in those citations, and so someone will be able to say, okay, it helps reference where they can find it, because you don't need to put like all the information in the text. We don't have room for that. So that's why you have the works cited page that has more detailed information about the text that your source that you're referencing. Okay, and so this is going to help acknowledge the source. We have to say where it came from, more than anything, and that's just very important. This is going to be not just in my class, and any of your classes. If your professor, in psychology asks you to write something, more than likely they're going to ask you to do an APA, which if you ever have any questions about that, let me know. In your medical classes, you're going to have, where they're going to ask you to write papers, and if they say that they'll tell you which kind of formatting they want, whether it's Chicago or APA or MLA, and you need to be able to reference those things. I know there are a lot of professors out there, if you don't have that in-text citation, you don't have the references, and it's not done correctly, I've seen it happen where you're just it doesn't matter, it's not just in an English class, in other classes you will fail that paper or that particular assignment if they ask for it. So if you see at any time in any of your assignments for any of the classes, if your professor says it needs to be in this format, whichever they choose, whatever is applicable to that particular subject, they're automatically saying, I should see in-text citations and there should be a works cited or reference page. Okay, and there's a great resource that we're gonna use called the OWL at Purdue that really is good at helping you know exactly how it should look. Right, and there's so many resources, so many more resources than there were 20 years ago. Okay, sources that definitely need acknowledgement, which is pretty much everything. Direct quotations. So this is a direct quote is going to be something that is word for word from the source. And it's going to be in quotation marks. You'll have to have in quotation marks because it's directly from the text. Just like if you were quoting someone like in a novel, if you're reading a novel and they have someone who's talking, it's in quotation marks, right? Because it's directly from what the person is saying. So that has to have acknowledgement, and especially in the in-text citation or introducing it. Arguable statements and information that may not be common knowledge. That also, where did you get that information? That's going to be very important to give it. Opinions and assertions of others. A lot of times, especially in our secondary sources, we're going to find sometimes we have to reference the opinion of someone else or the assertion of someone else, something that they've discovered, and we need to give them acknowledgement, even if it's something we agree with, like, oh, I thought of that too. When it comes to your research, you're going to have to find something that helps you out with your thesis, and you're going to have to back up your thesis with professionals or scholars opinions and assertions as well, even if it's something that you agree with and you've thought of yourself. A lot of times, it makes your work more reliable if you have reliable sources to back up your opinions. Any information you didn't generate yourself. So if you did not come up with that information yourself, if it's not something you wrote, if it's not something you thought of, if you got it from anywhere, you need to go ahead, even if it came from your notes from your professor, there is a way actually to acknowledge the source from like classroom notes that you received. So if it wasn't your original idea, definitely you have to definitely acknowledge the source. It's just like if you come up with an idea, and this happens a lot, where you come up with a really interesting idea and you share it with someone, and then that person takes that idea and shares it with someone else, but they don't give you credit, and then you find out and you're like, what? It seems like they came up with that brilliant idea and it's actually yours, and it's wrong. It feels unethical, and so you want to make sure you do the same thing and you give the same consideration to anyone else who came up with the idea. All right. If you collaborated and had help from others, so say someone else did the research and you're using that research, and even though you did it together, if you did not do it completely on your own, you would need to also acknowledge the source and acknowledge the other collaborators. Sources you do not need to acknowledge. This is a very short list. Information that most readers are likely to know. So say I was quoting the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't need to acknowledge that, although I may still I'm going to put it in quotation marks because it's not my words, but everyone knows it's going to be the Pledge of Allegiance. They know where that came from. Now, is it going to hurt for you to say the Pledge of Allegiance says one nation under God? No, that doesn't hurt. But just know that it is something that most people know. And maybe not 100% because not everyone was raised in the United States, so they may not know that, but most people who are reading your paper will know that, the Pledge of Allegiance or something like that. Well-known quotations like "Be the change you wish to be in," or "Be the change you wish to see in the world." That's something a lot of people know. And maybe, but it needs to be extremely well-known quotation. You have to okay, you can say the quote and someone random can tell you, oh, I know that, or hey, finish this quote. Someone asks someone random if they can finish the quote, then more than likely, it's going to be a well-known quotation. Material you created or gathered yourself, such as a survey you conducted. There is still a way though that you want to go ahead and reference that, because that way I'm giving a percentage and I'm just pulling it out of the air and people don't know where I got it from. So you may want to say, oh, you know, in a survey I conducted over 100 people within this time period of this group, this many people said that, you know, they agreed with this statement. You still want to reference that because I really still want to know where you got the information from. And so I know whether I should believe that information. I don't want to say, you don't want to just say 39% of people believe with a statement. Well, and I don't have any kind of idea where you got that information from. So you do still want to, even if it's something you gathered yourself, you still want to acknowledge yourself and say, you know, where you got that information from, because you want to be reliable. And that's a big thing. You know, when I'm doing a report, when I'm reading a report, I want to know where they received the information from. In our day and age, we don't always get this. So say if we're watching the news, they may say something and they don't tell us where it came from. Well, that's, you know, it makes me think, oh, well, what they just said isn't reliable. And so this kind of really helps you distinguish between reliable sources and unreliable sources when you're getting information secondhand. All right, plagiarism. So plagiarism is like such a big, like, bad word in academia and just in professional situations. So what is plagiarism? Um, Plagiarism happens when you do certain things. So if you have failed to acknowledge a source, you've plagiarized. So if there is no in-text citation, there is no introduction to the information, there is just nothing, you just put that fact in there and I have no idea where you got it from, you've just plagiarized. And so now you've actually hurt yourself quite a lot. If you paraphrase someone and it's too close to the original, you've plagiarized. So some people there's a certain types of plagiarism, and we're going to watch a short video within this video about the types of plagiarism. Then they'll say, oh, I'm just going to take word for word and just do a synonym for each word. Well, you're still plagiarizing. It's still too close. You haven't paraphrased correctly, and you're just substituting one word for another or changing it just slightly is still plagiarism. If you're doing it word for word, then put in your quotation marks. If you're trying to put it in your own words, you're still, you know, you still need to give that information. You don't want it to be too close. Now, of course, also when you're paraphrasing, and I'm going to go over this more than once, you still need to acknowledge where the information comes from. It does not matter if it's in your own words, that information has not become yours. You still gain those facts and that opinion from someone else. You still have to acknowledge where that source came from, either again by using in-text citations or by using a signal phrase. If you use someone's exact words without quotation marks, you've plagiarized, even if you do put the in-text citation afterwards. If I take a quote, word for word, direct quote from someone, and I do not put quotation marks around it, I'm telling my reader that these are my words. But if they're not your words, you have to indicate that by quotation marks. If you fail to use parenthetical citations, you've plagiarized. And again, that's for direct quotes and paraphrased quotes. So either word for word from the author, or even in your own words, you have to have that parenthetical or in-text citations. The surest way to prevent accidental plagiarism is to keep track of your sources, both online and print. We're going to do that by using research cards, you know, and that'll be in our next assignment. And so what we'll do there is we're going to have like digital research cards. At one point, you know, when I was younger, a lot of us, I know in high school, we were required to do everything using index cards, but there's no reason for that, okay? So we can have everything digitally, and it's going to help you keep track of it, but you have to make sure you put the information, and I will go over exactly how that's supposed to be. All right, so 10 types of plagiarism. Let's look at this. So you'll see here now, some of you guys might be thinking right now, like, oh, I've done that before. Like I remember doing that in high school. My teacher didn't catch it, so it must have been okay. But that's not necessarily true. So if you are guilty of these before, we're going to try to make sure we don't do that here. You'll notice that the website they were using was turnitin.com, where they were showing the how much of the student's work came from somewhere else. And so we are going to be using that for our own to make sure again that you're not um, getting someone's information. So by the way, this is not my video, obviously. This came from Right Check Videos, and you can find it yourself on YouTube by 10 types of plagiarism. Okay, so that's it for acknowledging sources and avoiding plagiarism. Go ahead and make sure you answer the 5 questions on the quiz afterwards, and we'll go ahead and you'll be ready to move on from there.